Today I want to cover how you guys can scale your Pconc bouncing well past the budget-friendly setups from my League Starter guide. I will be covering my own character and how I've scaled it from day 1 up to day 5 into a level 98 character that's capable of surviving very juiced mapping content as well as farming Pinnacle style content such as Simulacrum Wave 15s. So this is my current character we're looking at right now. We're sitting at 16 million damage, which is roughly 4 times as much as the end of the League Starter progression. If we look at the guy in game, it does look like what you'd expect actually from the end of the League Starter progression. We do just have a helmet that has some good implicits as well as fixing resistance. We have a Fury Valve, Dawnbreaker. Again, with Dawnbreaker you want to prioritize max roll for fizz damage taken as fire. And then chance to block would be the second most important role. Ring, minus mana cost, a bunch of resistance. Same thing over here. Now these boots are an upgrade from the standard boot. They have onslaught on kill, which means for a tree I can pull off all the points down here and put that somewhere else. So that is a big source of power. And the way I crafted these, I just looked for a pair of boots that have pretty good suffixes. You see here, they're all very high resistance values. And you ideally want to have maximum 1 prefix, because then you can simply use a Wild Matron Beast to guarantee suffix can't be changed. And then you hit it with a Veiled Orb. The Veiled Orb is going to either remove the suffix can't be changed craft or remove the singular prefix you have. And then it's going to give you a little veiled line. Now, before you unveil it, you want to bench craft the mana roll, just the regular flat mana, because that's going to block enough veiled mods that you are guaranteed to unveil movement speed. Now, I tried it twice. The first time we ended up with a pair of boots that had 30% movement speed and another 12% movement speed if you haven't been hit recently, which is really good, but it doesn't save us those points. So I had to do it twice in order to get the onslaught. Then you can just craft life. Now, if you do have full prefixes, it gets a little bit more dicey, because if one of those prefixes are movement speed and the Veiled Orb doesn't remove that movement speed mod, you can't unveil it. So just a few tips right there for the boots. These are powerful upgrade. For the gloves, again, it's exactly like you would expect from the League Starter guide, just stats and implicits. Belt, again, it's just a bunch of resistance. But the body armor, now here's where we're getting into the end game sort of progression. I have opted for a double corruption, +2 to level of socketed projectile gems, and 50% increased damage. Now, double corruptions are extremely expensive. You could even go for a singular corruption. The optimal ones would be +2 to level of socketed projectile gems, +2 to level of socketed AoE gems. The increased damage, you can also get +1 to level of all gems. And the final one would be +1 to all maximum resistances. And the way you can sort of know which plus levels to skills is you just hover over Poisonous Concoction of Bouncing, and you can see it has a tag for AoE, Attack, Chaos, Projectile, and Chaining. But the only 2 corruptions you can get are AoE and Projectile. The other implicits simply just don't exist. To briefly cover my life flask, what you want is for the number where it says Recover Life, you want that to be as high as possible. So I have 5,040 on this flask and 4,896 on this other flask. If you want to get that number as high as possible, ideally you want to buy a base that's minimum item level 81, because this is how you hit the best prefix, which is saturated prefix. It gives you 70% increased amount recovered and 33 reduced recovery rate. And you can actually buy flasks that have just dropped on the ground naturally with quality above 20%. So I bought one with quality 25%. Eventually, I do want to upgrade this as well, because all your flasks should be as high as possible. And you're just gonna alt spam until you get saturated. If you don't like the suffix, you could try to annul it. And then I was able to just use a beast craft to get the corrupted blood immunity over here. So that's explaining these flasks. Right now I have evasion suffix and reduced effective curses suffix. Okay, the rest of the upgrades can be found on the passive tree, so let's go look at that. I would say the easiest upgrade you can make is the Light of Meaning that gives you 6% increased chaos damage for all passive skills in this radius. We have so many different skills, so this adds up to an insane amount of increased damage. Right now, it actually doesn't exist. It was 8 divines last night when I was checking. You can actually self-farm this. This is a drop from Ritual, so you would want to spec into a Ritual farming strat, and you could even do a boss rushing strat where you only check the rituals if it has the nameless altar. And you'll know these altars because when you walk past it, it actually makes a pretty distinctive noise. Now you get these altars roughly 1 out of 50 times, and when you do get them, if you're fully spec'd into Ritual, you want to defer the key for that boss fight and then refresh and defer again and just keep deferring, because every time you refresh on that altar, it will give you a new invite to the boss fight. And I believe it's something like a 20% drop to actually get a Light of Meaning. And then there's the additional layer of RNG where it has to be the increased chaos damage. But thankfully there are a bunch of Light of Meanings that are actually even more expensive than this. So it is an option to self-farm it and potentially even get a bigger reward if you get the energy shield one, for example. Now this next upgrade is much less powerful than the Light of Meaning. It's a Thread of Hope with a large ring. It gives us a bunch of damage nodes and saves us some pathing points. We get some pathing points over here. This pathing node, these pathing nodes. I would not say this is a big priority, but I'm making it because I eventually plan to swap over to Poison Spark, and this is more useful for Poison Spark. So I thought I'd just put it on anyways for now. And there is one last unique jewel, which is, where is it? Impossible Escape for Chaos Inoculation. And this lets us save so many points to get +1 additional curse. You know, this is just 2 points to get the jewel, and we're saving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 travel nodes. And we're also getting some pretty good points over here. Now, I don't really recommend traveling to Whispers of Doom because it's so many pathing nodes, but if you're able to get this, pretty luxury item, you can get an additional curse. We also get some effect for our Grace as well as our Malevolence, and we get some damage, but the main thing is Whispers of Doom. Now, if you're able to grab this luxury item, the way I'm doing the double curse is I've swapped... Well, for Simulacrums, I've taken off the Quicksilver for a Witchfire Brew. This gives us a lot more evasion, and it just casts Despair as a curse in a big AoE. And I'm still doing the same Hexbloom manual curse setup, but now we've put on Temp Chains on the Hexbloom instead of Despair. If we were mapping, I would actually probably take off Roomies and put on the Quicksilver again, because movement speed is pretty important for mapping. And we are tanky enough that, yes, the massive amount of block from Roomies is going to make you more defensive than the Witchfire Brew, but also having such a massive increase in damage is going to make you more survivable because things are dying so much faster. So this is a good trade-off for me, and I was still able to push 98 Deathless without the Roomies. However, this is a very much more solid defensive setup. So if you don't have the +1 curse, don't feel too bad because you will be more defensive. I do want to note that this Impossible Escape is pretty rare, especially early on in the league, since it's gated behind a boss. So the majority of you guys will not be able to purchase one because there just won't be supply. Because of this, I am going to include 5 different path of buildings in the video description, one for every single day of the league, as I have been saving my progress. And you can just scale back one day and you'll see my character without this upgrade still very powerful. As for the rest of this tree, we have used some tattoos to save some points. I have a bunch of chance to avoid being stunned. I believe I have 6 of these because we were getting 60% chance to avoid being stunned with these nodes, and this is just a 1 chaos tattoo, so it saves us 3 points. It's sort of a no-brainer. Also, I didn't get the 5% chance to poison on hit from the glove implicit, so I just tattooed an int node instead, and that worked out just fine. You want to make sure you are 100% chance to poison, and to do that, you just go to calcs, Pconc bouncing, and you can hover over chance to poison and just add it all up, make sure you're 100%. If you're over 100%, then you can take some off. And, you know, for your accuracy rating, you could look over here. You see I'm 100% right now. And just scale your accuracy until you get high enough. I think I actually do have a roll in my ring to help with that. I am taking Wind Dancer. The more evasion you have, the better this is. I'm also actually getting a bunch of evade chance from my Watcher's Eye. I'm not even using the life gain on hit, but I will use that once I swap to Spark. But this is giving me a flat 5% chance to evade. So now we're up to 82% chance to evade. And the way Wind Dancer works is the first time you get hit, you take 20% less attack damage. And it also now boosts your evade chance by 10%. So I'm going to go from 82 to 92%. So it's almost like I'm pressing Vol Grace as soon as I get hit. The downside is you will take 20% more damage for the next 4 seconds after you get hit that first time. But you are now, in my case, evading over 9 out of 10 attacks. And we also have quite a bit of block. So even if we don't evade, we might block it. So this helps for those massive hits from like maybe Kosis or what's that other Simulacrum boss that might one-shot you. It helps prevent one-shots, but you do need to have quite a big evasion pool to make use of it. Now my plans moving forward will be to start filling out my Poison Spark shopping list. If you want to get this yourself, it is pinned in my Discord channel under the Pconc and Poison Spark section, and it's also in the video from before league start where I talk about the whole list and, you know, go over the priorities. So as you can see, the green highlights are stuff I've already purchased. I have the price I've paid for them. A lot of these actually ended up more on the higher rather than the low end. So some of the uniques a little bit more expensive than I expected. Large cluster, this is possibly going to be useful for Pconc bouncing as well, since the medium cluster with follow through is just such an insane amount of damage here. Let's just have a look. Right now I'm 16 million. If you unspec that, I drop down to 13.5. So having a large cluster so I could put another additional follow through medium cluster would be extreme amounts of damage. Might get there today if we craft the cluster. The quiver craft obviously requires Widow Hail, and we need to be unarmed, so there's no way this would be useful for Pconc bouncing. I'll probably craft this last. Now do be aware there is a very rare lantern mod that guarantees Nameless Seer for the entire hour on a specific map. So I'm hoping that the T0 uniques that are droppable in maps such as Defiance of Destiny and Mageblood will come down in price when we do hit those Nameless Seer hours. And also keep in mind the boss only drops for uniques will never be able to be accessible through this method. So again, the stuff I've bought like Light of Meaning, Thread of Hope, and Possible Escape, these are boss only drops, which is sort of why I'm investing in them early as well, because I'm expecting those to go up in price. All right, yeah, that's going to be the end of this video. If you're catching this as it's going live, I'll probably be blasting on twitch.tv/animeprincess. Hope to see you there. All right, peace.